today's program topic is going to be on moods and MS. Well, thank you, MS Views and News. And we're going to just kind of talk about what today's about. So today's about mood swings, talking about how our moods matter with MS. We'll talk a little bit about depression and tools to kind of cope with mood changes. We're also going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about coping mechanisms, things that you can do, and then, of course, talking to your healthcare provider as well. And but we're going to do something a little bit different, and I'll explain that in a minute, too. And so the picture of the next slide is a portion of this book. How many of you are familiar with this book? It's a Dr. Seuss book, and it's called Oh, the Places You'll Go. You can just say yes or no in the question box if you're familiar with the book or if you're not familiar with it. This is my something different tonight. I'm going to incorporate some of this book into some of the program this evening because it's very relative. And so how I will incorporate this book, you'll kind of see it will give us some talking points. Okay, I have a lot of yeses. Maria says no, but actually a lot of yeses for people that are familiar with this book. Perfect. So you're going to see how I incorporate it into talking about mood, and I think that's really important. So I'm going to start off. I'm not going to read the whole book because that would just take so much more of our time, but I'm going to read little parts of this book that I think are relevant. So with talking about mood, I'm going to jump into just a page here, and I'm going to read. I'm sorry to say, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch, and your gang will fly high, and soon you'll be left in a lurch. So this page and that part of the book makes me think of a lot of things. It makes me think of loneliness, which sometimes can happen and can be very common, especially when we're experiencing mood changes. We can often feel isolated or by ourselves, and also just the idea of life is going on, and sometimes things happen, and those things that can happen can really attribute to some of the mood changes. So I'm going to continue to incorporate some of this book in today's program, but we'll move on to our next slide. Okay, one more slide up. So anytime you see that picture, I'm going to incorporate something from the book. So why do our moods matter? Well, our moods matter quite a bit. They matter if you have MS or if you don't have MS. But moods really play a central part of our life for everybody. And our emotional state really is kind of influences how we think and how we feel. Mood is really defined as a temporary state or feeling. But moods affect our overall quality of life, and that's important, and that's why we talk about moods a lot here on the Mental Wellness Chat. We also have Sandy from Florida. This is her second time that she's been on the program. Her mood is so-so. I'm so glad that you're here, Sandy, so thank you for joining us. So we're going to move on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about mood swings for just a second. So mood swings are, when our mood there's different kinds. There's types of mood swings where your mood might be really good, and then something happens and your mood drops. There's also different types of mood swings where you can be feeling pretty good, and then having a really big mood shift really fast. And so the type of mood swings that we'll talk about here today, we're not going to talk about bipolar depression or bipolar mania, any of drastic mood swings, but I just want to talk a little bit about have any of you experienced where you're kind of feeling one way and then something happens and you sort of feel the other way? And we'll even relate this to MS, if you want. So have you ever had an experience where you where you feel kind of okay one day or one part of the day, and then your mood kind of shifts? So we have Linda says, I have a strong emotional component to my MS. It's a perfect topic. I call it MS mixed mood disorder. So, we will talk a little bit today about how, we have, Maria said, definitely. Wayne said too many times. Maddie said, yes, it happens. I was panicky yesterday. Terry says a lot. Joy says yes. Warren says no, and that's okay. And good, because we want balance here. And then Susan said yes. So, so often we're going to talk about different moods and different ways that our moods are impacted because of our MS. Sometimes, you know, some people may have a mental health diagnosis that causes mood shifts and mood changes. We're not focusing on that quite as much today. We're really focusing on MS and how it impacts our mood, or how our mood might impact our MS, or how we're doing things with MS, etc. And so even Laura said, yes, mine can go from 0 to 60 and then do a 360. So so big mood shifts, and that's really hard and can be very frustrating to manage. So I do want to mention, if you feel like you're having major mood shifts, or coping tools that we talk about today are not helpful, or you need more, I want you to ask for more. And I want you to do that with your doctor or your healthcare team, because that's going to be important, because having you know, stable moods is helpful. But we know with MS, our moods can shift from time to time. We're going to move to our next slide. So experiencing a fluctuation of emotion for a long periods is known as a mood swing. So some indications that you might be going through mood swings are kind of like really extreme lows for an extended time, more than 2 weeks, and then signs of feelings of up and down, and the inability to express why you're feeling a certain way. We're going to move to our next slide and talk a little bit about the connection of disease and emotions. So MS is, you know, a disease that, you know, impacts your myelin, where I'm not going to do a basic MS education program, but mood swings are common in MS, and the connection between the disease and emotion often can go unrecognized. And not today, but I usually will have a slide of an iceberg. And at the tippity top of the iceberg, that's, you know, if you think about MS in that way, that's the things that people can see. Sometimes people can see mood, and sometimes they can't. They can't see how someone's feeling inside. That's usually in the bottom of the iceberg. Unless you're very angry or frustrated, or et cetera, then people might see it, but not always. So the connection, you know, between you know, disease and emotions often goes unrecognized. It's easy to see the physical effects of MS, such as like problems with balance or walking or tremors, et cetera. But the emotional part can be a little bit invisible. And MS can raise your emotional instability, or your lack of emotional resilience, which may, you know, lead to, you know, periods of frustration. And so we're going to talk about ways to cope with some changes in mood swings here in a bit, but we're going to continue on with the education piece first. So causes of MS-related mood swings. Some common reasons that mood swings can happen and can kind of strike without warning, or leave you feeling kind of frustrated, or just frustrated in general, because it's a lack of control. It's important to understand kind of what you're feeling and why you're feeling when you're experiencing mood swings, but being honest with yourself is really important. So some common reasons: stress definitely is a major contributor to MS-related mood swings, and MS can cause stress, and life can cause stress too. Inability to cope, having poor coping mechanisms can lead to mood swings. Grief. So we had Laura in here that mentioned grief. Grief can lead to mood swings. Depression, anxiety, stress, pent-up frustration, etc. So mood swings generally resolve with time. So that's, you know, important to know. But it can also cause an unbalanced expression of like happiness or sadness, and your emotional responses can even be just very impacted by your mood and by how you're feeling. We're going to move. Okay, so we're back to my book. So you're going to get my theme here, that when that picture comes. So go back to that picture real quick. Perfect. We're going to stay there for a minute. So now we're going to talk about something that that I feel like it's in this book, and I feel like it's relevant to MS, and I want you to chime in on the group chat and let me know, or not the group chat, but the question box. So I moved forward in the book and I found a spot, and it says, you'll come to a place where the streets are not marked. Some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark. A place you can sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare stay out, or do you dare go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? And if you go in, should you turn left or right? Or right and 3/4, or maybe not quite. This reminded me about how treatment decisions and decision making in MS can be really hard. Thinking about how you may wake up and feel kind of okay and want to do something, or you might want to make plans, but it might be hard to make plans with MS because of your fatigue or because of your situation. So I wanted you to go into the question box, and as I read that, can just think about, has ever like a period of time of having to make decisions, or does that impact your mood? Does that impact how you feel and how you can make plans, etc.? And I'm going to answer some questions as we're as we're writing in the question box. Okay. So Terry said, this correlates how I'm able to move at the time, and more mood swings when I'm around more people. And I have heard that before. I've actually heard that on this mental wellness chat, that sometimes when we are overstimulated or around too many people, we can tend to have a little bit less emotional resilience. Some of us can get energy from that. Some of us lose energy from that. Linda asked, can sensory overload contribute to mood swings? Absolutely. Because if you think about all that you're taking in, when one can have a sensory overload, makes you kind of want to shut down a little bit. And so that can impact your mood. It might pull you in a little bit more. It might make you a little bit anxious or frustrated, etc. So absolutely. We have some comments here. Laura said the weather can impact her mood. That is a very, very good point. The weather can impact how we feel physically sometimes, and it can affect our mood. And depending on where you live, we have a range of people from all over the country, but depending on where you live, that can impact your mood too. The people that live up north tend to have less sunlight, or a less amount of sunlight compared to like North Carolina, where I live. And so you can see the differences in mood sometimes. Maddie said, yes, I always feel like I'm messing up. Decisions are really hard to make, and and it really can make you feel insecure. Linda said, I don't make plans. And then Pam said, disappointed when I can't make decisions. Terry says it makes me feel rushed and less competent when I'm among others. Wayne said important decision-making moods. And then Rhonda says, yes, poor sleep happens. So when you think about decisions, yes, you can have poor sleep. You can have that can feed into anxiety and how we're feeling. I think it's really important. And this happened to me recently. I made a treatment change, and making a treatment change is not easy with MS, and I don't have to ask you if that's the case or not, because I know that's the case for many of us. Sometimes it might be it was an empowering decision. It's a good decision, but still it can be a difficult decision. And when you're making a treatment decision, it can feel like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing to do? If I, kind of like that book a little bit. So I just wanted to call attention to it. We have someone here that says they can't be in large crowds, and they also have difficult making decisions. So we know when you're making decisions, I think it's always good to have someone to talk to, trusted friends, or it might be a counselor, a therapist, definitely related to your treatment, talking with your doctor, your healthcare provider, but talking with people that you love and that love you and support you. That's important because when you're making decisions, we often can feel kind of alone too. So managing mood swings might be difficult, to manage, but here's some steps that you can do. If you notice that you have mood swings that are feeling kind of out of control or feeling like they're taking too much of your attention into your daily life. So one of the things is to talk to your doctor. That is a resource, that can be very, very helpful for you. Sometimes it is not the total solution, because we need to really look at how we cope. And we're going to talk about coping and things that we can do to shift our moods. And I've done a lot of research for you guys today. And we'll talk about those. But another thing that you can do is therapy. Therapy is a great, safe place to talk to someone that you trust and to talk about what's going on, because sometimes our mood swings are related to grief. They're related to anxiety or stress or other things that are going on in our lives that we might feel out of control of. And having someone to talk through that with might be helpful. When you pair that, especially with some other coping strategies, etc., having some sense of social support is important. Sometimes adjusting your diet can help your moods, and in that way, I'll give you an example. If you drink a lot of coffee or have a lot of caffeine in your intake, and you notice that you become a little bit more anxious or edgy, then that's related a little bit to your diet. Or if you eat really unhealthy, and I eat unhealthy sometimes, so don't think that I am saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not. But if you eat unhealthy sometimes, you generally can feel bad. I heard a long time ago, and I've always kept this with me, a nurse practitioner say, if you eat junk, you feel like junk. And that is so true. When I eat bad, I tend to feel a little bit bad. Does it ruin my day? Not necessarily, but it does alter my mood a little bit. And vice versa. When I'm eating a little bit healthier, I feel a little bit better for what I'm eating. And then making time for sleep. So those are some things that you can do to help manage your mood. We're going to move on to the next slide. And we are going to talk a little bit about, we're going to leave it here, Bill, but we're also going to talk a little bit about MS and mood changes. So with MS, there's the reaction to the disease, and then there's, also things that are happening, or it can happen organically that can impact your moods, but then also medications can impact your moods. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. For example, when you have MS, if you have a relapse, if you've ever had a MS relapse, did you notice a change in your mood? I know for me, making a treatment change, I noticed I didn't have a relapse, and I made a treatment change, and I noticed a change in my mood. When I've had an MS relapse, I absolutely have had a change in my mood. It's a big transition. And we have Jeffrey asking, does mood swings related to medications? In what instances should I tell my doctor? We're going to talk about mood swings with medication, so hang tight for that question. Jeffrey, we're going to get back to you. And Maria said, I agree with eating and sleeping, of course. And then Linda said, we are what we eat. And Maria says, diet for sure affects me. So you can, and Linda said, yes, my therapist taught me how to control what I can and what I can't. And that's very helpful. And Maria said, my prayer is my constant go-to. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure I read all of the feedback. So as you can see that, MS, when you were diagnosed, it shifted your mood a little bit. You're kind of like in the beginning of this book, you were on your way, and then bang ups and hang ups happened to you. And that's a big challenge. So it's important when MS is the trigger to some of the mood changes that you stop and you allow yourself to process the changes, or how you're feeling and why and how it relates. So I'm going to talk about, we've got our book slide up again. I'm going to read one other page, and this is a page that is probably one of my favorite ones, and it's called, I call it the waiting place. And so the waiting place is, I'm going to read it as the book should be read, and then we're going to talk about the waiting place and what that means for MS. So hold on one second. Let me see if I can. You can get so confused that you'll start into a race down long, wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace and grind on for miles across weirdish wild space, headed, I fear, towards a most useless place, the waiting place. For people just waiting for a train to go or a bus to come, or a plane to go or the mail to come, or the rain to go or the phone to ring or the snow to snow, or waiting around for a yes or no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting for the fish to bite or waiting for the wind to fly a kite, waiting around for a Friday night or waiting perhaps for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil or a better break, or a string of pearls or a pair of pants or a wig with curls or another chance. Everyone is just waiting. So let's talk about this waiting place here with MS. Of course, we're not waiting for those things, but with MS, I can tell you a couple of things, a couple of waiting places. Waiting for disability. I often, when I have worked with people, that's, something that is, definitely impacts people. Waiting, waiting on insurance, waiting to feel better, waiting on things to kind of come through, that it can be a really frustrating thing. And so if you find yourself stuck in this waiting place, and whatever you're waiting on, I want you to be mindful that this waiting place kind of impacts your mood a little bit. If you're applying for disability, you might notice that your mood is down, it's lower. If you are waiting to start a new treatment, you might have a little bit more anxiety, and your mood might be a little bit more anxious. If you've found yourself in a waiting spot, I just want you to be mindful that that does impact your mood, and just to acknowledge, you know what, I'm kind of in a waiting spot right now, and I'm kind of in a holding place, and this is hard, and I don't like it, but I won't be here forever. So we're going to move on to our next slide. So we talked a little bit about MS and mood changes, but this is, part of how you react to your disease. Your diagnosis affects your mood often. The symptoms of the disease affect how you feel about it. Thinking about how does fatigue affect your mood? I know for me, fatigue really affects my mood. My mood is a little bit lower when my fatigue is higher. I have a really good friend, when her balance is off, her mood is lower. And so it can be related to a symptom of your MS. And so it's important to know that, there's some aspects of MS that do change your mood. We'll move on to our next slide. And actually stay there. I'm ahead of you by one, Bill. Please stay there. So we're going to talk a little bit about moods from reactions from having MS. So, you may have anxiety, you may be dealing with grief. And this is really important to note and to make sure that you have some awareness of as well. Now, moods from disease symptoms. So the most common actual mood disorder that can come from MS is pseudobulbar affect, and that it's the most common, but it's not common. So you would know if you had experienced it, because you would have great periods of time of maybe laughing that's not congruent with feeling happy, and you might have a lot of crying that is extensive that's not congruent with really feeling sad. So you might cry uncontrollably or start laughing uncontrollably. You could definitely know, if it's something that upsets you, to talk to your doctor about. This is nothing to be fearful about. If I say that it's the most common, easy diagnosable mood disorder from MS, but it's not common. So I kind of want to clarify that. And your within your brain, our frontal lobe, which is just behind your forehead, helps to control your mood and how you express your emotions. And so if you had MS lesions that were in that area, that could impact some of your mood and how you express your emotion. In some rare cases, some lesions can cause a feeling of euphoria, which is that state of happiness, overly happy, even when circumstances are kind of serious. This is not as common. And these are things that you need to talk with your doctor about. If you had, experienced moods that you cannot control, if you're experiencing uncontrollable laughing or crying at times that didn't seem appropriate, or an elevated mood that doesn't change, they would rule out mental health diagnoses as well. But these are things to talk with your doctor about. So moods from disease medications. We're on our next slide. So we're going to go, and Jeffrey, we talked about this, that we would bring this one back. So some of the drugs that treat MS can impact your mood. For example, if you have taken a steroids for relapses, that can very much affect your mood. I'm not sure if any of you have experienced that, but steroids can do that. Provigil, which can help with fatigue, could make you anxious or depressed. They're, trying to think of there have been a disease modifying drug. I can't remember which one, but one of them had listed about depression. I don't remember which specific one, so I don't want to be brave enough to mention which medication. But if you're having any mental health issues and you think it's correlated to a medication that you are taking, I want you to talk to your doctor about it. And that's really important to know, because they need to know your side effects. So yes, the interferons are known to cause depression. Thank you, Maria and Linda. It was an interferon. I just couldn't remember which specific one. And we've got Jill on here. So hi, Jill, and I bet Stuart's listening as well. So your moods may change from disease-modifying drugs too, and so you need to make sure that you talk with your doctor. If you take a new medication and you know it's impacting your mood, or you think it might be, just have a conversation with them. So we're going to move on to our next slide. So when do we worry about our moods? Moods can go up and down and can change every day, and some mood changes are very subtle and some can be drastic ones. If mood swings are life altering, then you may need to rule them out. And so thinking of depression. So depression is a very common thing and very common within people living with MS. And depression is something that can be treatable, and that's important to note. And also depression can really change the way that you look at the world, the way that you experience things. So if you are living with any symptoms of depression or think that you may be depressed, it is really important to talk with your primary care provider, your MS specialist, talk to a counselor, talk to somebody about it, because your quality of life often can improve if you have some treatment. And that treatment might be counseling, that treatment might be medication, it may be therapy. I don't know what that will be for you or what it looks like, but it is really important for everyone, if you feel like you might be having symptoms of depression, to talk with your doctor about it. Also if you're experiencing any of the symptoms, the pseudobulbar affect, where, because that's treatable as well, where you're having the laughing or the uncontrollable crying, and it doesn't seem congruent with what's going on in your life and your moods, talk with your doctor about it. Anxiety can be very well managed as well. So a lot of mood changes or significant mood symptoms have some treatments that can attach to it and help, especially if those moods are really significant. Now, we know that, our moods shift kind of throughout the day often, and, that as something happens, if I was, to go I woke up yesterday, true story, and I made a coffee and then my cat spilled it. Well, of course that shifted my mood a little bit. That was kind of frustrating, but that wasn't a big deal. And then, went on through the day and other things happened and my mood, I noticed my mood might shift a little bit. But if you're noticing big shifts in your mood and that can also feel very internally very exhausting. So if you notice those things, talk with your doctor about it, please, please. So we're going to talk about talking to your healthcare team about your moods. And why do we do this? Well, we talk about this because it's really important. Often you walk around within yourself and in your own experience, and you might think that other people can see what you're experiencing, or maybe you don't think that. But either way, a lot of mood and a lot of the emotional things that you experience are invisible. And so again, if you can think about that iceberg, like I mentioned at the beginning, the tippity top is what people can see. And if you have a mood where you're really frustrated, or say that you're really sad and you're crying, yeah, those things might be seen by other people. But often, even if you've had shifts in your mood and you're having a hard time kind of feeling feeling as if that can be controlled, then it's really important to talk with your doctor about it because they're not going to know that that's going on in your everyday world. Your doctor gets a small glimpse of how you are feeling and how you are doing, and they're going to need your report of how you are doing as well. So, and in mood changes, remembering that mood changes can affect your self-care, how your treatment adherence with your medications, and how you take care of yourself in general. It can interfere with your relationships, things at home, at work, and your overall quality of life. And mood is often something that is treatable by interventions that you can do, as well as in some cases therapy, and in some cases medication too. And I'm not saying that that's guaranteed the routes, but often a mix of all of that can help. Let me look real quick and see if anyone has. So Maria said that, Jeffrey said, thank you. You're welcome, Jeffrey. And Maria said, yoga, since my diagnosis has helped greatly. Yoga has a really great connection to mind and body and mental wellness. And yoga is an incredible thing to do. So thank you for sharing that. So we're going to move on to our next slide. I just mentioned that, but mood is treatable. We'll move on to our next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about managing MS-related mood swings and just mood swings in general. So the first step is to definitely talk with your doctor, but we're going to also talk about some interventions, things that you can do if you've noticed that you have a mood and you want to shift it. So say that your mood is a little bit lower. I'm the mom of a teenage boy, and a teenage boy sometimes has like a little bit ups and downs and lower moods, etc. And so one of the things that I did the other day, because I felt like he needed a mood shift, is I took him to a lake close by the house. And why did I do that? Well, it was a sunny day. It was quiet, and it was a beautiful view. But I said, let's go sit on the dock for a little bit in the sun. And that was probably one of the most therapeutic things I could do with him. And that was really helpful. So what did it do? It shifted his mood a little bit. It distracted him. It was a really pretty view. It also, we were in the sun. That's great for vitamin D, wear sunscreen, do what you need to do. But just doing that alone was just changing the situation, providing something else, something different, something pretty to look at. And it shifted a mood. So there's some other strategies that we have for mood shifting. So you can, so we're going to talk a little bit about, so counseling sessions may be helpful with a mental health expert. Medication can be helpful. Antidepressants. I want to get to the shifting. Okay, so delegating. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, and one of the things that you can do is delegate some of your tasks. See if somebody else can support you or can help in different areas. And that, that is something that can be helpful. Now, I'm going to go into some of the research that I did for you. I have a couple of books, and I encourage you to have a couple of books that are like good motivation books for bad days. And these books are filled with little strategies, things that you can do that give you ideas. Because often when our mood is low or we're not feeling as good, getting creative is really hard. And so sometimes I will, when I was therapist full time, I would pull these books out all the time with people. So I'm going to just pick a couple of things. So one is practicing gratitude. That can shift your mood. Getting out into nature. Doing anything but not everything. Perform one small act of kindness. All of those things contribute to a positive mood. And if you've heard me speak before, I talk a little bit about how things can spiral up. Often we can really identify with things spiraling down, but when we intentionally do small things, we feel a little bit good. Like going to the lake that day and sitting in the sun was just a really nice little small thing to do. Or today I took my dog out for a very small walk, but just seeing her actually happy about going on the walk actually was like a little step up. It just felt like really nice, and it kind of lifted my mood a little bit. So another strategy, another thing that you can do is, let me go to another book. I'm just pulling, nothing is better than writing a letter. So for this intervention, you write just a small letter or a note, or send a card to someone that you have missed. Just the act of doing that will lift your mood up a little bit. Either buying yourself or buying someone else, especially actually buying someone else a small gift, can lift your mood up a little bit. Not a big investment, a small, nice thing, a token of sorts. Also taking a shower. And so, of course, using all of your safety equipment if you need modifications, and so that safety first and in that respect all the way. But sometimes taking a shower can kind of help lift your mood a little bit. For some people, it might be a bath. For some people, it might be a shower. But the shower specifically can help you to kind of feel like you're washing away some of the bad, or you're feeling that you're it just kind of allows you to kind of have a different perspective. So I do recommend the shower. And for depression and loneliness, they actually recommend, warm showers, not hot showers. You do what you need to do for your MS, but this is just for general mood. Have something to look forward to. This doesn't have to be big. This can be very small things, but having things to look forward to really can help your mood. And so these can be small things. For example, watching a baseball game. There's a lot of baseball on here lately. Or having a new book to read. The latest episode of a show. There is a comedy special that came out yesterday evening on Netflix. I can't wait to watch it. And so that's my something to look forward to. And I even wrote it down in my planner so that way I can remember I've got something I'm looking forward to. I might be cooking a new recipe, etc. Also thinking about your setting and how you can lift your mood by that. So before I got started here, my desk area was pretty messy. I just had a lot of papers from work. And what I did is I moved things because that really did help my mood because it was a little bit more organized and a little bit more controlled. So there are little things that you can do to help create a shift in your mood. And some of it, if it's related specifically to your MS, there's going to be certain things that you can do, but then also just related to general mood changes, there's other things you can do as well. So coping with stress and mood tools. So, we know ordinary life can be stressful. So meditation, yoga, visualization techniques, aromatherapy. Here are some other tips. And this is a lot. Remember, this will be recorded. Wake up earlier, make a friend smile, have a quick tidy up, which means just kind of clean up a little bit, smile at a stranger, take a walk if you can, look through old photographs, put some laundry in. It's kind of, or having something that you can check off, light a candle. That's something that I would do. Eat at least one healthy meal. Do something nice for someone else, put on an outfit that you love, and make sure you get enough sleep. So we're going to move on to our next So we're going back to our book, and I want to ask you, just out of interest, well, actually, I'm going to read a couple of things. So we have Eric says, my support too often recommends antidepressants, and I don't think I'm depressed, mostly stressed out. And so, again, I'm not providing any medical advice here, but I do think it's important to think about all the things that you can control. You might want to see a counselor. If you're having a lot of stress, your counselor actually, one, would be able to help you really identify if you're dealing with depression or if it's just stress. And sometimes moods can look, big mood changes can look like depression too, if you're feeling, significantly sad or frustrated, et cetera. So it's important to see a professional, usually in those cases, so that way you're not on your own as you figure it out. And sometimes there's even something called adjustment disorder, which happens when a lot of stressful things happen that can look like depression or can look like anxiety, but it actually is not either. It's a period of time that's a lot of stress going on. But that even having a period of an adjustment shouldn't be done by yourself if it's extremely challenging. So Maddie here says, picking up my ukulele helps. Jeffrey said, I've written a list of 20 things that I feel blessed to have. Both of those are awesome things. Melissa said, spending time with my 4-month-old grandson, listening to soothing music, looking at pictures from past decades. Laura says, making a to-do list. Don't have just big things, but small stuff to do, things that you can say that you did something. And when we can check off that we've done something, often that is a little mood boost for us. So those are all really, really great suggestions. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to go back to this book. And we're going to, now we're going to talk about, so I picked out a page, and I picked out something that I feel like is relative to MS here. I think this book can speak to a lot of life challenges. But this one talks about, I think, self-talk. So I'm going to read it, and I'm sorry because I haven't read the whole book in order, but just this page. Except when they don't, because sometimes they won't. I'm afraid that sometimes you'll play lonely games too. Games you can't win because you'll play against you. To me, that's a very powerful page and statement. And it's often something that we can get stuck is, how do we talk to ourselves, and how does it impact our moods and how we feel? I wanted to ask you, so in the question box, have you ever found yourself at times talking to yourself in a way that's not helpful? And I'll get us started. Let's see. I have this morning, I was intending on leaving the house and being super productive for work. I was productive for work, but I had a harder time getting started. And I know many of you can understand this. I was just a little bit tired getting started. So at first, my self-talk was, I didn't get up like I wanted to, and the day's not going to be as productive as I wanted to. And I kind of had like a little bit of talk that wasn't that great. And then I had to stop myself. But in that moment, it felt, it doesn't feel positive. So often, when we are having negative self-talk, it impacts our mood, and it's important to stop it when we notice it. We have Wayne here that says a few times, I know as being a therapist that often self-talk kind of plays into how we're feeling, and how we talk to ourselves actually really impacts our mood a lot. So if we talk to ourselves in a negative way, our mood is lower. If we talk to ourselves in a more realistic way, our mood is going to be more neutral, etc., or might feel better. And okay, here, this is great. So Linda says, yes, but I try to not beat myself up. Been there, done that. Perfect. So it's important to note that sometimes that, if you're feeling that your mood is low, listen to how you're talking to yourself, because that might be, kind of impacting how your mood is too. See if anyone else has contributed. So Maria says, remembering unpleasant things that occurred is not helpful. I talk to myself about this often and have tried to remind myself to snap out of it. So paying attention to where your mind is going, because what are you fueling? Because if you're fueling negativity, if you're feeling negative thoughts, then your mood is going to be lower. And you often know what your triggers are. So you can ask yourself, have I been ruminating on things? Am I thinking about the past? How can I focus and recenter myself to look at the future or think about other things? And so Jeffrey said something with some humor. He says, do bears poop in the woods? Yes, I self-talk all the time. And so thank you, Jeffrey, for saying that, because I think there's an awareness. We actually, we self-talk to ourselves a lot. And so what are we saying to ourselves when we're talking? Okay, so we're going to move on to our next slide. And so that, leads us to our mood tool that we technically were talking a little bit about was, how can we change the dialogue that we tell ourselves, and paying attention to what it is that, we're saying and it's impacting our mood. So a couple of things to do is, you could, you could develop a mantra. And that was a tool that I found in one of these books, but I have so many pages flagged, I'm not going to be able to find it. So one of the tools that you can, decide to use is developing a mantra, something you can tell yourself that can help to change your perspective. Like, I'm going to get through this, or today has a lot of good things happening, or I wonder what I'm learning here. I don't know. If you struggle with how you're talking to yourself, also always, I think a very good baseline is what would you tell a friend? Because we often will tell our friends great things, and we don't talk to ourselves in that same sense of grace and kindness, if that makes sense. So we tend to be a little bit harder on ourselves. So we're going to move to the next slide. It just talks about exercise and movement. This is one of the easiest things that we can do to boost our mood, is to move, literally to exercise. It could be yoga, it could be swimming, it can be walking, it can be all sorts of, it can be strength training, exercise, and hopefully it's something that you would enjoy. But exercise and movement, what it does is it produces dopamine in our brain, and it also helps to create endorphins, and those things help us to feel better. So a mood shift by taking a small walk, and it doesn't have to be anything big or massive. For me, I did a very small walk in my neighborhood. It was we have a new street, so it's tiny, this little circle I did. But this circle actually kind of was like a nice little mood boost. So it doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be big, but it has to be something. We'll move on to our next slide. Making sure that we are getting adequate rest is probably one of the, I talk about sleep a lot, and I didn't talk about sleep that much today, which I'm surprised about. Sleep hygiene is so important, but sleep is one of the things that can help us to be very resilient. And if we don't get enough sleep, we tend to not be as resilient emotionally. So paying attention to how much you're sleeping, talk to your doctor if you're struggling with sleeping, etc. I'm going to read some more comments. Sadie says, I try to shift my moods a lot, and that's great. Melissa says, some days I struggle to think of the things I can do rather than the things I can no longer do. Yeah, and when we get stuck on what we can't do versus what we can, it's hard, but and it's normal sometimes to kind of feel like you're in a bad place, but it's our responsibility to shift ourselves to try to move to that better spot so we can feel better. Maria said, dressing and grooming are great bad mood breakers for me. Absolutely. Taking a shower, getting ready, putting on some clothes. I work remotely, so I notice when I dress nicer, my mood is higher. I feel better. If I don't put on makeup versus putting on makeup, or if I don't do my hair versus doing my hair, it shifts my mood a little bit. We have Wayne that says, it's sometimes frustrating to me when I am in a quiet mode and the people around me are in a depressed, angry mood, and that forces me to retreat. And I do think your environment matters, right? And so if you're around, whoever you're around is going to impact your mood as well too. Laura asked me to show the book again before. So there's the places you'll go. And what I will do, there's a book called 21 Ways to Happier Depression. These books, remember, they video record this. Choosing Joy. These were, I'm so sorry, you can't really see, I can tell. And then Choose Calm. So these are just some books that I grabbed, most of them at a store called Five and Below. And I use them a lot in therapy because they've been very helpful. And then the main book I've been using is Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. And that's been just to help lead the conversation. And Carol said, I went to Aquafit with friends to leave marital stress, and then having a nap with my daughter in the late afternoon. Yeah, that can be a really good mood booster. Absolutely. What is the number one thing that you do to help improve your mood? And we'll have you enter in what do you do to help improve your mood? For me, going to the lake has been very helpful as of late. Going to look at pretty things, pulling out a book and getting inspiration from that, or sitting outside. Okay, so we had Sandy, Carol, and Dion that say exercise, exercise, exercise. Linda says take time out by myself. Linda's line says get outside. Jeffrey says clean my clutter. Sarah says yoga. Pam says watch comedy shows. Maria says prayer while I breathe. These are all really great things. Terry says cook. Julie says have a mani pedi and a haircut. So some self-care, self-love. So there's all things that we can do. And so I just wanted to encourage you that we all have things individually that we can do that will boost our mood. And if I want you to implement those things for yourself. And remember, if your mood is lower, what can I do to move it? Is there a small thing I can do that will shift it or move it for me? So I wanted to thank MS Views and News for tonight's program. It would not be possible without them. And this program has been a very solid program for people living with MS and also needing a little bit of space to not be alone and to talk about moods, etc. I'm going to read before I give the next directive, but so Bruce says being in nature. Laura says looking at flowers, driving with the music on. Rhonda says listening to music, in the background, meditation music. Dion says thank you. And so we all have things that we do, and I want you to remember those and remember the things that other people said. It might have been an inspiration. Not goodbye, but see you later. So I am not saying goodbye. I'm saying see you later. See you next time. You guys have been incredible participants. And until then, take care of yourself.